Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoyed this what if and want to see part 3 of it, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. 2 hours later, Naruto's tour of the city had just ended with him asking his guide where the closest place to eat cheap at was, to which she promptly answered, directing him to a rather small Chinese restaurant. After that, he quickly thanked her and left for fear of being asked out when he really didn't need that at the moment. He just got his mind off Sakura after all. It would be really weird if that team or any of the others found me on a date with a strange girl when I had just arrived in this world. Though, it would be hilarious just to see the look on their faces at how quickly I managed to pick someone up. A few minutes after sitting down and ordering a bowl of shrimp fried rice, the front door to the restaurant was smashed open by a blast of dark pink energy. Looking to the door with a slightly annoyed look, the blonde teen saw a group of 3 other teens enter, the first of which was a girl around his age. She was a couple inches shorter than him, putting her at the same height as Sakura, with a very thin build, and looked of the same body type and build as his old teammate Sakura. She had light gray skin, with 2 pink triangular tattoos on her face, one under each of her pink cat-like eyes. Her pink hair done up into a pair of horns with black bands, while her bangs hung over her eyebrows, covering them from view. Looped around her slender neck was a black ribbon with a blue pendant hanging down from it like a cat collar. She wore an off-the-shoulder black dress with blue ruffles and buttons down the front, black and blue striped stockings down her legs, and black platform boots that had blue soles, meaning she was even shorter than she appeared. Following the gray-skinned girl into the building was what Naruto thought was a 10-year-old from his size, maybe even a baby. The person was extremely short, with a green jumpsuit, which is an H and a yellow circle on each of the shoulders, while covering his hands and feet with green gloves and boots. Steel plates covering the backs of his fists, and thick steel soles on his boots, a pair of goggles on his forehead leaving his beady eyes visible. On his back is a circular backpack with controls reaching over his shoulders to hang down in front of his chest. Last was a massive teen that made Naruto wonder what his parents or whoever he lived with fed him. He is a very tall and muscular fellow with collar-length brown hair and a small goatee. He wears a sleeveless black shirt and long black pants. Studded gold bands cross his chest and run around his shoulders in an M shape. His feet clad in gold shoes of some sort that look armored like the chest armor, and gold studded bands around his wrists. The 3 of these teens walk over to a table, as if they own the place, and sit down as a waiter walks over to Naruto and sets his food down in front of him. "Excuse me, are these teen titans I've heard so much about?" Naruto asks his waiter curiously, only for him to receive a shocked look from his waiter. "No. That would be Jinx, Gizmo, and Mammoth. They're a couple of teenage super villains from H.I.V.E Academy. They come here all the time requesting free food. If they don't get it, they smash up the place. I just hope the new guy doesn't bother them to leave." He replies quickly before leaving. The blonde shrugs his shoulders, then starts to eat his Chinese. Just a few seconds later, another waiter walked out of the kitchen, rolling up his sleeves with a frown on his face, before standing in front of the 3 criminals and shouts at them, "Leave this restaurant immediately, or I will be forced to call the police, and have all of you are." He does not finish telling them off, however, because the large guy, that Naruto can only assume is this Mammoth, or whatever, lashes out with his left fist, sending him straight into and through a wall, before getting up and started to walk over to him as he says, "Yes, it's time to put the new guy in his place." After saying this, he picks up the injured waiter by his collar and reaches his fist back, in order to punch him yet again. Naruto, watching this display as he continues to eat, curses himself inwardly for his good sight, as he pushes out the chair to his left with his foot, and kicks it into the air, and then kicks it once more, sending it flying at the behemoth with one hand as he keeps eating. A loud thwack is heard as the chair hits Mammoth in the side of his head and breaks on impact. Getting up while rubbing his skull, the large teen begins growling in anger. He turns in the direction the chair came from to see a blonde teenager eating nonchalantly, as if nothing at all had happened. "Who the hell do you think you are that makes it seem like a good idea to throw a chair at someone like me?" When he doesn't receive a reply, merely the boy ignoring him, Mammoth walks right up to Naruto and looks right into his eyes as he finishes eating. "Hey, I'm talking to you, you blonde idiot. Answer a move." He lets out as the table gets kicked right up into his chin by the blonde's knee. "Ow. What the fuck? You just made the single biggest mistake of your life, punk." Mammoth growled, grabbing Naruto by the front of his clothes and lifting him up to face him. "Is that so? Because, I just have to say, you don't seem like you're smart enough to realize when you're up against someone who not only hit you once with a chair while eating, but a second time with the table he was eating at when you got too close for comfort. Oh, and by the way, you definitely need some Tic Tacs or something, because your breath stinks." Naruto says while waving a hand before his face as he then kicks Mammoth in the stomach and lands on his feet. The blonde then walks over to him as he charges chakra into his own fist before jumping. and decking Mammoth right in the face, sending him to the ground and wall 5 feet away unconscious. Just as Naruto is walking away to return to his food, a man walks into the restaurant that makes Naruto pause and narrow his eyes. The man has a stern face with a prominent chin and gray-white hair that's slicked back. His dark gray eyes look at him first, then at the 2 still conscious members of the trucker silently. He wears long flowing white robes trimmed with gold, and a black field on his chest has a stylized demonic skull on the front. Headmaster Blood, is there something the matter? The pink-haired girl, Naruto assumes she's Jinx, asks as she stands up from her seat only to bow to the old man. Oh no. Nothing's wrong at all, Miss Jinx. I was simply coming to retrieve you, and your delinquent friends for deciding to ditch class yet again, when I saw this rather interesting young man beat Mr. Mammoth, right after telling him he would have lost in the first place no less. Turning to Naruto, the man starts to speak to him with a crisp tone. Hello young man, my name is Bother Blood, headmaster of the H.I.V.E Academy. I was wondering, if you wouldn't give me your name? The man questioned with a slight smirk on her face. Uzumaki Naruto, what of it? The blonde set then questioned with a raised brow as Blood rubbed his chin. Interesting name, Japanese if I'm not mistaken. The man questioned, and Naruto nodded his head slowly to the man. Well anyway Mr. Uzumaki, to get straight to the point, I would like to offer you a place at my school, if you're interested in becoming a villain, or perhaps just a simple thief. As he says this, Brother Blood's dark gray eyes glow red for a split second as Naruto feels something nudging him in his mind to accept this old man's offer. This feels strangely similar to one of Ino's techniques, though it feels slightly more refined. Maybe I'll go with him for now, to see what this academy is all about. Who knows, maybe I'll be able to collect some information on these Teen Titans I've heard so much about, or at least I might be able to find something to do. Naruto thought then reached out a hand to shake Brother Blood's with a fake smile. Sure, I'll go. As long as I get free food and a good bed. Naruto replies smoothly and Blood give him the tiniest of grins before then looking over to Jinx and Gizmo. As for you two, I would suggest you try to keep a low profile, unless of course you actually want to be caught by the Teen Titans. Be thankful that your idiocy has led me to such a fine prospective student, or else I'd have you all in solitary for the next month. The man growls at the two who nod their heads to him quickly. Very well then, now Mr. Uzumaki, if you would please help Mr. Gizmo carry Mr. Mammoth, I'll take you to the academy, where you can start first thing in the morning. Naruto nods as he walks over to the large boy and lifts one of his arms up with some strain, while the small kid releases a pair of metal spider legs from his pack, then walks over with them, and releases several metal tentacles which he uses them to get the other arm. The boy mutters something illegible under his breath, that sounds like a curse as he helps Naruto lift the teen behemoth, and follows Jinx and Brother Blood out the door of the restaurant. So, to the H.I.V.E Academy then, this is going to be fun. Hahaha. Naruto thought to himself with a smirk as he and the rest of the H.I.V.E group walked out of the restaurant with Mammoth. 6 months later and Naruto had managed to become a respected member of the H.I.V.E Academy known as Tempest, primarily due to his wind jutsu. Like all students there, he was required to wear a uniform of their own design. That was when he decided to use a little more of the equipment he had inherited from the man who murdered his mother. He now wore a pair of baggy black shinobi pants with pockets on the sides, his kunai case at his right thigh, and a studded belt looped around his waist with 2 equipment pouches at the small of his back, a pair of steel-soled combat boots like Robin's that made a clinking sound as he walked. He still had his Onbuishu sleeveless shirt with the mask pulled up over his lower face. His red t-shirt remained the same only with a black spiral put onto the left shoulder, a black headband with a red swirl over his forehead and his shin, forearm guards and gloves. He also had a black Onbu armored vest that was of an odd design, having the shoulder and neck armor of a Chunin vest, was made of thick black leather with mesh weaved into the inside, while the bottom was rolled up at the bottom with thick buckles over it that held it onto his body tightly. Over all this, he had a new ninjutsu which he had got out of that ninja's will. It was completely black with no guard, thick leather over the handle, with a string at the end which was for going around his wrist, so he would lose it. And last he had a new sheath, that was simply a sheath with one strap going over each shoulder, and a final strap under his left arm to hold it on. Another difference between this sword and the other one was that a seal on the blade converted his chakra into wind, allowing him to use wind blades and the like without hand seals. During the past 6 months he had risen to the top in a few of his classes, most notable being infiltration, deception, stealth, hand-to-hand and armed combat, and theory of assassination. He even had a small group of fangirls from some of these classes, which his newfound friend, Jinx, kept chazzing off before anything drastic could happen like what happened to Sasuke. Of course his entrance exam hadn't exactly been a piece of cake, as he had to fight a girl named Cheshire. It had been interesting fighting this world's version of Shinobi that was without a doubt. Flashback. Naruto was sitting in a seat with an annoyed look in his eyes, while watching several of what were supposed to be the best of the H.I.V.E students. What he has seen thus far were a batch of losers who used their powers to solve their problems, while 2 or 3 weren't so bad. Jinx, the ninja girl Cheshire, and Private H.I.V.E were all decent hand-to-hand fighters. So Mr. Tempest, what do you think of the other students? Blood asked while entering the room, and Naruto rolled his eyes. Are these really your best students? Naruto questioned, and Brother Blood nodded his head with a slight smirk to his lips. Come on. The only ones with any real talent beyond some stupid flashy power is Jinx with her acrobatic moves, Private Hive with his shield and strength, and that Cheshire chick is a decent ninja to be able to vanish like she does, and has some decent taijutsu moves. But the rest dug. Naruto said, then groaned, and Brother Blood chuckled in his throat. Really? Then I suppose you fancy you could take any of them on and still win then? Hey, Mr. Tempest. Blood questioned, and Naruto snorted, before nodding his head to the older man. Very well then, since you're so confident in your abilities. Your entrance exam for coming to the H.I.V.E Academy shall be taking on our finest hand-to-hand combatant, Ms. Cheshire. Blood stated, and Naruto grinned slightly. Ninja vs. Ninja. Now that sounded like it would be fun. Sure. I'll take on your ninja chick. Naruto said with a grin under his mask, and Brother Blood nodded his head, before heading out of the room with a smirk on his face. He'd show the new recruit his students weren't so weak. The next day. Man, you really don't know what you're doing, do you? Mammoth asked Naruto, who rolled his eyes. Mammoth didn't even mind being beaten by Naruto. Apparently, he often needed some sense knocked into him, and more often than not it was Jinx who did the knocking. Ironically, she was his best friend. What's there to know? She's a kunoichi. I fought them all the time back home. Naruto said with a shrug, while he and the rest of the trucker headed to his exam in the main gym. He had given them all a fake backstory to his life. He basically said that he was from a hidden ninja village in Japan that had some technology, but nothing like guns. He also said he had left because of corruption in the village, as they strayed from the true ninja's path. Well, it technically wasn't a total lie. She's not just a kun. Wait, what the hell is a kunoichi? Gizmo started, then questioned, and ironically it was Jinx who answered. A female ninja. Most of them are better at infiltration, and less physical dealings of the male ninja, aka shinobi, and usually seduce targets before killing them. Steal from guys in brothels, and have a better range of flexibility. Jinx replied, and the boys all looked at her with raised brows. What? Me and Cheshire are two of the top girls in school. We hang out with Bumblebee all the time. Jinx told them with a frown, and Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Whatever, she's still not so weak, man. She can take any one of us down with her hands tied behind her back and a blindfold on. Gizmo shouted, and Naruto scoffed. She's an average ninja. I never said she wasn't weak, just that I've dealt with kunoichi like her before. Naruto said simply, and Gizmo growled at the blonde before muttering about idiotic blonde fools under his breath. Whatever, see you guys after this test. Naruto said, walking into the gym, while the trucker headed to the stands. The gym was odd at the H.I.V.E, which was all Naruto could really say about it, as he had only seen it in use from the outside thus far. It was large, with yellow honeycomb-shaped tiles on the floor and walls, with stands for the other students to watch them. A reinforced glass room was near the upper center of the room, and had controls for something in the gym. Walking into the room, Naruto saw his opponent sitting in the center of the room, her legs crossed into a lotus position. Cheshire had tanned skin like Naruto himself, with long black hair pulled into two long tails somewhat like Tsunade, only with green cloth holding them apart, and a large cat mask on her face that had green eyes and a fanged grin. Black and pink whiskers painted on the sides to the eyes, with two more black and pink stripes above them. She wore a green kimono top that was long enough to act as a short skirt with light green trim, and long sleeves to cover her hands. A light green sash was wrapped tightly around her waist. She also had on a pair of high-heeled black boots with green socks coming down from the top of them. Looking at the girl's choices in footwear made Naruto wonder just how the hell she could ever be stealthy. The rest, however, somewhat made him think of an Onmu or Hunter Nin in terms of style, so he decided not to take her too lightly. Students, I would like to introduce you all to our newest prospective student, Mr. Tempest. Brother Blood said, and several people either booed or shouted something at the blonde, who grumbled under his breath about evil brats. And as his entrance exam, he will be fighting Miss Cheshire. Brother Blood said, and Cheshire looked up at him, and the blonde could almost swear she was checking him out. Though it wasn't that bad, Naruto had to admit girls checking him out were still kind of odd, though he figured that, since he was the only other ninja in the school, she might just be checking what he could do physically. Now then, let the exam begin. Blood then exclaimed, and Cheshire literally vanished, making Naruto blink in surprise. Okay, that's not normal for any ninja. Naruto thought to himself, while crouching slightly, and looking around for the girl. He then ducked when he saw the girl's claws appeared in midair heading straight for him. Naruto then narrowed his eyes and flipped back and looked at the direction the claws had been. Naruto blinked when he saw a pair of green eyes and a fanged grin hanging in midair. Cheshire duh. Naruto thought to himself and lunged towards the disembodied face, only to miss as the girl dodged him. Naruto growled angrily as he then spun into a kick, only to hit nothing but air once more as the girl seemed to dodge, then lunged at him. Her claws appeared once more and Naruto cursed, rolling to the side, in order to avoid the girl's attack. Frowning, Naruto reached into one of his equipment pouches, and tossed a smoke bomb to the ground, raising smoke to cover the area. Cheshire was surprised by the smoke bomb. Even though she herself had a couple, she wasn't expecting another person to actually use them. Looking around, Cheshire saw a shadow and tossed several shuriken from her sleeves towards the shadow, only to see them pass through nothing. Cheshire then heard a whirling sound and flipped over several more shuriken, while looking around the purple fog surrounding her. She then saw another shadow come at her, and swiped her claws. She connected with the figure only for it to vanish in a plume of smoke. Inu, Bakume, Usagi, H.I.V.E, Mikami, Tori, Tanuki, Haku, Taka, Itachi, Mengusu, Kitsune, Yama, Tori, Inu, Taka, Neko. Came Naruto's voice from all around the room, spooking out both the students in the stands and Cheshire herself. Last time someone did this was when she was still in training with her masters. At that moment a shadow appeared, and swept its hands at her. Cheshire moved back on reflex, but her eyes widened, seeing actual claws had sprouted from the blonde's hands. The teen came at her once more, swiping his claws at her as she dodged, and tried to swipe at him with her own. The two met one another toe-to-toe, at least until Naruto caught one of the girl's arms, and then kicked her in the stomach, sending her flying out of the smoke, and into the wall of the arena. Naruto then jumped out of the smoke into a flip, and pulled his ninjutsu free, when halfway to the floor, holding it out to his side as he crouched down on his feet in one hand, head bowed. Looking towards the now visible Cheshire, Naruto lunged forward, swinging his ninjutsu and carving a long gash out of the steel walls, when Cheshire managed to dodge. Quite impressive. Blood muttered to himself, while watching the fight from the control panel, and leaned down to one of the technicians. Bring it up to level 2. He said with a grin as his technician nodded his head, before twisting a few knobs and pulling a lever down. Down below the arena began to change. Naruto had to balance himself as several of the honeycomb tiles on the floor rose up like large pillars, some making rows or stands. Okay, this is really starting to get interesting. Naruto thought to himself as he then flipped from his spot, and charged some chakra into his ninjutsu before then swinging the blade, a burst of wind coming off his sword and heading straight for Cheshire. The cat-masked girl rolled out of the way, however, and swung one of her arms, several shuriken flying from her sleeves towards Naruto. The blonde simply spun his sword to block the attack, then crouched and lunged forward. Naruto swung his ninjutsu and swung at Cheshire. The girl used her claws to block, then swipe at the blonde. Naruto quickly moved to the side, in order to avoid the attack, then backhanded the girl in the face, sending her stumbling back. Naruto then flipped his sword, so he was holding it backwards, and lunged at Cheshire, sending another blade of wind singing towards her. Cheshire managed to avoid the blade, however her right leg was sliced by the attack, and she landed in a heap. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, hoping he wouldn't have to hurt the girl too badly, when she tossed several more shuriken at him. The blonde cursed and flipped up into the air, and over the attack as they hit a pillar behind him. Go to level 5. Blood suddenly set from his spot in the control room, and his technician nodded his head to the old headmaster. Meanwhile, landing on the pillar, Naruto held onto it with chakra in his feet, only for the arena to change again. This time tendrils came out of the walls with guns of some sort, and Naruto couldn't help but gawk. Shit, they don't play here, do they? He thought to himself, before cursing and dodging a laser beam. Cheshire saw the blonde in the air, and took the opportunity, quickly getting onto one knee. The girl threw several shuriken towards the blonde-haired nin. Naruto cursed seeing the projectiles heading for him, and grumbled under his breath about this being a bad time, before he quickly sheathed his sword. Naruto then focused his chakra into his hands, and then into the air around him, before spinning in midair. Futon. Makukaten. Wind release. Demonic rotation, Naruto exclaimed as what looked like a miniature tornado formed around his body. The shuriken spinning into the attack spun with it before then flying back towards a vastly surprised Cheshire. The dark-haired girl grunted as she flipped herself back and away from the shuriken and looked up to see several of the tendrils on the wall be ripped off by the blonde's attack. Up above, Blood grinned seeing the ability. I suppose that's why he calls himself Tempest. He controls the wind itself. The man thought to himself with a chuckle as the wind around Naruto slowly calmed and the blonde landed on the ground panting slightly. Damn it, I still haven't really perfected that one. I need to make it a priority if I take on people with guns in the future. Naruto thought to himself, then rolled out of the way as Cheshire lunged at him, swinging her claws down on the blonde. Naruto then reached back and unsheathed his sword to block Cheshire's next swipe. The blonde then grunted and lifted the blade up, cutting through the steel claws, and then kneeing Cheshire in the chin. The girl was sent into a backwards flip and rolled to a halt against one of the pillars, while Naruto sheathed his sword once more. Cheshire quickly pushed herself back up only for Naruto to lunge forward and push her out of the way of a laser blast. The girl then got to her feet and blinked when she saw Naruto chuckle. You might want to cover up there, Neko-chan, he said, and held out her sash, and Cheshire blushed so many shades of red, she was sure she shouldn't have blood flowing to her brain or heart. Quickly getting back down, the girl pushed her robe closed and held it like that, cursing the blonde in her mind. The two then heard a clapping, and turned towards where Brother Blood now stood, floating down on a pedestal with a smirk on his face. Excellent work, Mr. Tempest. I must say I wasn't expecting you to actually defeat Ms. Cheshire in such an interesting way, but nonetheless you have passed your entrance exam. Follow me to your new room, so we can get you situated. blood set to the boy as his platform landed, and he walked off. Naruto looked at the sash in his hand, then over to Cheshire, and let out a soft sigh, before tossing it to the girl. You might want to wear a belt under that, if you don't want someone else pulling it off you. Naruto said to the girl, before walking off after Brother Blood, while Cheshire reached out, and took her sash back with a lowered head. Then flashback. That night he officially moved into the Hive. He was given a room with 2 roommates, one of which was a kid whose outfit made him think of that Batman guy. He wore a gray, black outfit that looked like he had black underwear on the outside, black boots and gloves, a pale yellow belt, with a long cape, that had a pale yellow circle at his chest to hold it to his shirt, with a strange mask, that had mock bat ears. Last, his skin was light gray like Jinx, with a thin build, and his eyes were blood red with dark rings around them. This was his first roommate, known to those in the school as Kid Wicked. Kid himself somewhat reminded Naruto so much of his old friend, Shino, because he hardly ever talked, and when he did it was with logic and reasoning, though he had only heard this from Angel. Kid never spoke to anyone but her for some reason. Later, Naruto found out that by moving into his cape, Kid could actually teleport to anywhere he could envision in his mind. Then there was the new guy in school. His other roommate was a strange teen who went by the name Stone. Stone had only been there for about a week, and seemed to struggle with some of the same classes Naruto did. He was a tall, muscular, African-American teen who wore a black muscle shirt, and a pair of blue jeans with a pair of combat boots, and a studded belt around his waist. He also wore a pair of steel bracelets, a pair of rings that when smashed together, turned his entire body to living rock, similar to the guy that he heard about called Cinderblock. On his head he wore a steel circlet that matched his bracelets. Naruto didn't know much about him, however, but he could tell he was hiding something. Whatever it was really none of his business, what the guy did after all. Currently, Naruto was walking with Jinx and Gizmo to the cafeteria for lunch after the one damn class that Naruto found to be as boring as one of Iruka-sensei's lectures on history, theory of mayhem. Honestly, he didn't see how anyone actually got what the hell Brother Blood was talking about when he came up with this shit. I mean, honestly, when am I actually going to use total war tactics that some dead old guy came up with when he was bored? I'm a damn ninja, for crying out loud. I should be killing people from the shadows, stealing top secret plans, and spying on the damn enemy. I'm not supposed to go plowing through an entire army like some huge behemoth. The blonde complained as he walked down the halls, his right eye twitching. Jinx simply shrugged her shoulders. She thought Naruto's way of thinking was better than blowing everything straight to hell. This could possibly be due to the fact that if they did destroy everything they'd have nothing left to steal. Not to mention she didn't fancy the idea of being the last girl on Earth, and plainly the last person on Earth. The loneliness might kill her if that happened. Give it a goddamn dress already. Tempest, we hear this every time we have this damn class. Stealth this isn't stealth that. Hell, I'd even bet that your tests were rigged. The little midget tells the boy with his arms crossed, and Naruto merely gives the bald midget a quick yet fierce glare. You want me to prove that I can sneak past anyone and anything? Ha, half pint. If so, then just name your challenge, and I'll meet it. Gizmo simply smiles at Tempest's haughty response as they sit down at their normal table. Jinx slaps her face seeing the look on the green-clad midget's face. That look always meant trouble for someone, and it looked like it was going to be Naruto today. Alright then, snot for brains, listen up and listen good. There's this suit in the Titan's Tower that was made by Robin himself a while ago for some reason. But from what I've heard he stuffed it full of gadgets to take on the other Titans. I don't know exactly where he put it, but if you can manage to steal it, I'll not only believe that you can sneak past anyone, but I'll also do anything else you want. Gizmo said to the blonde confidently, and Naruto took a thoughtful expression. If I can get a suit that was supposedly powerful enough to beat the Titans, it will be almost impossible for anyone to stop me when I finally decide to leave here. The blonde thought, then smirked, before holding a hand out to the pint-sized hare. Gizmo, you got yourself a bet. With that the two shook the other's hand. So then what do I get if you fail to get the suit? Gizmo then asked with a grin while Jinx just huffed and started eating without the two annoying boys. I won't. All I need to do is get the blueprints for the place from the Jump City archives and I'm set. The blonde replied, and Gizmo seems to remember something before then pulling something out of his backpack. Naruto sees that it appears to be a simple CD, but has a feeling it's so much more. I managed to download that when we took over the tower a few months ago. It's the floor plan, blueprints, and air event map for the entire Titan's Tower. Gizmo tells Naruto with a grin, making Jinx look up and glare at the pint-sized hare. Did you know we could have used that to sneak into the tower ourselves, right? She asks of her teammate, and Gizmo blinks and lets out a small sigh. Unfortunately, we can't. That scrum-buffing loser of a tin can only had the blueprints. Any access codes or sentry drones aren't shown on that map, so we'd still be going in half-blind. Gizmo grumbled angrily, and Jinx blinked before shrugging her shoulders. Gizmo did manage to make some sense when he wasn't trying, at least, and Naruto quickly snatched the disc from the half-pint. Thanks Baldy, I'll get it done over the weekend. Naruto says while pocketing the disc, and wondering what he might need for this little venture into Titan's Tower. H.I.V.E Academy, 4 in the morning 3 days later. Naruto walks down the halls of the Hive with a smirk on his lips and a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Within it is the X suit and the broken remains of the thermal blaster Robin once used. He had grabbed the extra items to prove it was all real, maybe used thermal blaster in the suit, and he wouldn't have to hear any lip from Gizmo about none of it being real or something. Hey Gizmo, I got it. Naruto says as he walks into the room that the bald dwarf has all to himself, only to find the floor littered with mechanical parts. And there in the center of the room was the little boy asleep with a teddy bear that has goggles like his own in his arms in the bed. Unable to let this opportunity pass, Naruto takes out a small spy camera and snaps a few quick shots before putting it back into his pocket and leaning over Gizmo with a sadistic smirk on his face. Oh hey Angel, how you doing? Naruto questioned of no one while smirking. It was a wide known fact Gizmo had a crush on Angel after all. What, Gizmo? No, I haven't seen him. You wanted to know if he could help you with something. At these words, the kid immediately jumps up out of bed and literally flies to his door to open it only to close it with a fire red blush on his face as he turns to glare at Naruto. What the hell was that for, Tempest? Gizmo demanded angrily of the laughing blonde-haired ninja. Naruto managed to calm down before getting up and wiped a tear from his eye. I got the suit for you. Oh, and some weird parts that were lying around with the words thermal blaster under them. Gizmo's jaw literally drops at this, and he takes the duffel bag it's in from his hands. All I want you to do is fix the thing up, figure out how it works for me, and maybe do a couple redesigns. Naruto said, then pulled a picture of what he wanted out of his kunai case. Hey, he was bored on his way back and decided to design what he wanted beforehand. Looking at the plans, Gizmo had a calculating look on his face for a few moments before then opening the bag and looking at the suit's belt. Shit, that crazy gak muncher used that for a power source. What is he, a damn nut? Gizmo wondered aloud, making Naruto raise a brow to the pint-sized terror, who then put the belt back in the large bag. You're going to have to give me a couple days to study it before I get to work on your version. I'll use your design if you let me use the chakra thing of yours to power it. Gizmo said with a simple tone and no cursing for once. Naruto took a thoughtful look before then looking at Gizmo skeptically. Is that all you want? To study my chakra? Naruto questioned of the annoying little midget who glared at him before nodding his head. The blonde teen couldn't help a small chuckle before he then gave a thumbs up to the pint-sized hair. Deal. The Trucka's room. This room was an odd piece of work. Unlike the others, it had been made a bit larger due to the Trucka being the shining stars of the Hive before their defeat at the Titan's hands. Each of them had a door inside with a nameplate, which led to their individual bedrooms, while on the outside they had more entertainment-type things. A small workshop for Gizmo, a large comfy couch and TV for Mammoth, and last an art easel for Jinx, who amazingly enough had an artistic side. However, at the moment, our favorite blonde ninja Naruto was laughing loudly, while Gizmo was growling, and Mammoth was just plain confused. What's got Temp in stitches? The lumbering brute questioned with a confused expression, and Gizmo pouted childishly with Naruto roaring with laughter. My ribs. The blonde exclaimed, holding said aching sides, while trying to stop his hysterical laughter from becoming worse, and failing miserably. Soon, however, the blonde by some small miracle of nature managed to stop his laughter and looked to Mammoth, while wiping a tear from his eye. Gizmo asked Angel to that dance tomorrow, got shot down and started to cry when she walked off with Kid. He said, then fell backwards, roaring with laughter once more, and Mammoth snickered. It's not fucking funny, ass wipes. The bald midget roared towards the blonde and his oversized burly friend angrily. Angel and Kid have been friends since they were 5, of course they'd be going to the dance together. Mammoth said, and Naruto blinked, while slowly stopping his laughter, both Gizmo and he looking to the big guy. How do you know that? They both questioned with confused looks, and Mammoth stopped his chuckling and grinned nervously. Me and my sister Shimmer knew them back then. He admitted, and Gizmo started cursing loudly, while Naruto just laughed once more. Say, who are you asking, Temp? I hear Cheshire kind of likes you. Well, in the weird I want to kill him painfully yet respect him at the same time kind of way, but... The large teen said, and Naruto cringed at that. He'd heard about the girl's rather strange affection, vengeful anger towards him, and kind of wanted to steer clear of her for a good long while. Nah, you can't trust a ninja not to stab you in the back first chance. Naruto said while standing up and leaning against the door, only to flinch remembering a certain pink-haired girl who would furthermore have cheating whore boldly written over her massive forehead in his mind. Might not even bother going. Naruto then said with a shrug, before leaning back, and Mammoth gulped. Are you nuts? This is like the only fun we get to have around here. Well, besides pranks, but that's another story. And even Jinx is going with that stone guy, for Christ's sake. The large man exclaimed, and Naruto waved him off with a frown. If you want, I could help set you up with someone or something. Mammoth offered, and Naruto raised a brow towards the big guy. Who are you taking then? He questioned, and Mammoth blushed. Leviathan. He admitted, and Gizmo fell out of his seat and shivered. The freaky sea serpent chick? He demanded loudly with white eyes, and Mammoth glared. Hey. she's really not so bad when you look past the fact she has gills, claws, fins, scales, and a tail. The large teen argued, and Naruto blinked then sighed. Leviathan was a girl who reminded him of Aisurabi in her sea beast form now that he thought about it. Man, why did that have to happen now of all times? Beast, would you two just calm down and relax? I wanted to know how you're doing on my suit anyways, Giz, before I saw that lovely moment between you, an angel at least. The blonde said then snickered and Gizmo muttered something under his breath angrily, before rubbing his face. Upgrading the suit to adapt to that chakra shit is impossible. The thing has a fail-safe bird brain installed, so no one could alter it unfortunately for him. I was able to copy the weapons and other supplementary systems, in order to make a new more advanced suit instead. The tiny terror explained and then snorted. Good thing too, that bird brain moron used Xanathium of all things to power it. The bold midget exclaimed and Naruto raised a brow in confusion. What the hell is Zeno, Shina, that shit you were talking about? Naruto questioned and Gizmo slapped his face. Xanathium ore, it's a rare mineral that produces enough power to keep a decent-sized home going for a month with a small amount. However, it's highly unstable and usually ends up exploding and atomizing everything around it based on how much of it there is. Gizmo explained while sounding like a dictionary, making Naruto blink. Alright, so these rocks are bad news? He questioned and Gizmo snorted. Depends on what you're using it for. If you want a useful power supply, you're fucked. If you want it for some kind of mega blaster cannon or something, you've got your new best friend in Xanathium. Gizmo said and Naruto raised a brow. Wait, how is it unsuitable as a power source? The blonde questioned while scratching his head and Gizmo let out a sigh. Because if you're not careful, it goes boom and atomizes you. Gizmo said with a frown and Naruto grimaced. That didn't sound too appealing. Not to mention the stuff is rarer than hell. If you had a scanner, sure you could find some, but the only one of those in town are housed over at the Lexcorp warehouse downtown. Gizmo said and Naruto rolled his eyes. Okay, so what about you scanning my chakra to see if you can make it into a power source then? When's that happening, Giz? The teen questioned, and Gizmo grumbled under his breath and looked over at the blonde. Seeing as no one will notice, why not during the dance? Jinx has been gaga over Stone for the past few weeks, so she wouldn't notice if a fucking truck hit her, let alone me and you being missing tonight. Gizmo said and Naruto frowned slightly. While true she did seem a tad bit too affectionate, Naruto had reason to believe it might be that brother blood guy who was doing it. Alright, Mammoth, cover for us or something. Naruto said with a nod then to the large man who nodded his head with a yeah I know towards the blonde, and the midget who both then nodded. Gizmo looked like he was about to start something when he swore loudly, and pointed to a nearby clock. We've got a history of crime class in 5 minutes. He called out before jumping from his chair with Mammoth while Naruto rolled his eyes, made a Kage bunch in which he sent after his book, and calmly walked out of the room as Giz and Mammoth tried to find their books or whatever. The blonde was thinking to himself silently, at least until he bumped into someone, well, more like walked into him then fell on his ass. Growling slightly, Naruto looked up with an annoyed frown, only to see his roommate Stone standing over him. Sorry Tempest, I thought you'd move out of the way. The big guy offered a hand to Naruto, and the blonde took it, and got back to his feet. Yeah, well I kinda space out every now and again. Naruto admitted while brushing himself off and walking back towards class, when his Kage Bunshin dispelled itself at the next corner, leaving his book there. Walking to the corner he kneeled down and picked up said item, only to get a start. I didn't see that there before. Stone said mostly to himself, while scratching his head and Naruto chuckled nervously. Ancient ninja secret. The blonde said and Stone shrugged. So I hear you're taking Jinx on a date of sorts. Naruto mentioned and Stone grinned nervously. The last guy who had broken Jinx's heart had ended up with broken legs and arms, courtesy of an irate Tempest. Apparently, he had a very bad temper when you messed with his friends like that. Yeah, I mean well, she and I have been seeing a lot of each other lately, so I just kinda thought it would be fun too. Stone tried to explain far too quickly, and Naruto chuckled, before patting the large teen on the back. Joltin head, I don't have a problem with you, yet, we'll see what the future brings however. Tempest said with an amused smirk beneath his mask, while walking away, and leaving Stone to gulp. The blonde then chuckled to himself and headed towards class, nearly laughing his head off when he heard Gizmo and Mammoth rush past him, and into the room, the blonde ninja lazily following after them. The night of the dance. Naruto was annoyed as hell, while looking at a simple almost box-like device. Do you honestly expect me to fit in that? The blonde questioned, and Gizmo muttered under his breath. No, just do whatever you do with your chakra, and put a hand into the box. He said and Naruto frowned, before forming a smaller Sengen, and then placing it into the box. He was surprised when it didn't move and merely hovered. Okay, that's unusual. He said mostly to himself, then rubbed his face, when he heard the music from the dance booming in his ears due to the volume they had it up to. Could they have that damn music any louder? The blonde grumbled angrily, and Gizmo ignored him, preferring to listen to his headphones, while lightly bobbing his head from side to side, and analyzing the Rasengan in the box. Holy shit, it's similar to Jinx's power. Gizmo said to himself, remembering the time he made some anti-Jinx gadgets, because on Friday the 13th her powers went crazy, and she nearly blew herself straight to hell. As he checked over the strange energy called chakra that the blonde used. Checking over a few more theories, he then moved on to a spectral analysis, and found it was less similar to the Pinkette's own power on this scale before then moving on to attempting to siphon it, and use it as energy. Well? Naruto questioned, and Gizmo held up a finger, making Naruto grunt in annoyance. Gizmo was working for a couple minutes longer, and Naruto felt his eye twitch as he continued to hear the dance music, only they were now playing a slightly less annoying song that sounded strange to him. Aha! Gizmo suddenly exclaimed and nearly gave the blonde a heart attack. Figure it out or what? The blonde questioned, and Gizmo nodded his head with a grin still on his face. Yeah, it's really not as bad as I thought. It's not magic, so I didn't have to worry about any of those Seal's shit, and Jinx uses something slightly similar, in that it's a natural energy of the body at least. What I'll probably do is... Before the techno-whiz could continue his rant, Naruto made a sharp whistle, and the boy blinked towards him. Yo, I don't need to know the details, just tell me when it'll be finished is all. Naruto said, and Gizmo grumbled to himself, before taking a thoughtful expression on his face and nodding. I'll have to get your measurements, if you want it to actually fit you. The midget said, and the blonde shrugged, before walking over, and Gizmo pulled out a scanner, which he then used to get the blonde's exact measurements down to his hair length. Alright, that'll be all I need. Just don't bug me for the next week or so, and I'll have the suit all nice and pretty for you. Gizmo said while getting out a few of the designs for the suit Naruto had whipped up, and his own, which featured circuitry and other such things. Naruto shrugged his shoulders, before walking out of the room, and placed his hands behind his neck and head. That night, Naruto was crawling through the air vents of the H.I.V.E Academy, several C4 explosives in a bag he was carrying with him. Take an arson class. He muttered, remembering when Jinx said he should take said class, so he could blow bank vaults. To hell with the class, I'll take the damn explosives. He then muttered to himself, and opened a vent, dropping himself into a seldom used room. Looking around, he walked over to a support beam at the far end of the room, and placed the C4 onto it, before then setting the frequency on the bomb to the same as the others. It needs a class for this. He muttered before taking hold of two wires on the bombs, and placed them into the clay-like C4. Naruto then looked around before walking over, and jumped back into the vents, quickly returning the grate of the vent back to its proper place. He crawled off. Lad Giz managed to finish the new suit and all, but he didn't have to take so long with it. The blonde muttered under his breath, and then blinked, before pulling out a map he had in his belt, and looked it over. That way, he said, turning, and went off towards another section, then removed the grate and dropped down. Looking around, he walked over to the next support beam and did the same as he did with the last. Nodding, he then turned and jumped back into the vents. Seriously, doesn't anyone know you're not supposed to have vents big enough for people to crawl through? He wondered aloud, then found his next spot and slowly opened the grate. Looking down, he inwardly cursed, finding Brother Blood's office. The one day I don't get detention for skipping class. He muttered, then dropped down and crawled over to a dark corner, and placed the C4 down. However, before leaving, Naruto looked around, then walked over to a curtained area, and moved it slightly, the girl's bathroom. He said thoughtfully, then put the curtain back before then snickering to himself. Never would have pegged him as a perv. The blonde said to himself and started to walk off, and jumped back into the vents above him. Why do I always have to do the dirty work? He then whispered to himself, while crawling through the vents, and came to his next destination. Really, he was wondering why none of the other students had tried this yet. After all, who wouldn't love blowing up their skull at some point? Honestly, they should have expected this. You can always trust a dishonest person to be dishonest. After all, it's the honest ones you have to watch out for, as you never know when they'll do something incredibly stupid. Naruto said to himself before then jumping down to his next stop. 2 days later. The school was mostly empty, with a few stragglers remaining. The rest had all been sent on assignment to parts of the world. Brother Blood said it was for the final exams, but Naruto had a much different feeling, seeing as he, Mammoth, Gizmo, Jinx, Stone, a kid with one eye called Seymour, Kid Wicked, a burly teen called Private H.I.V.E, and Angel. They had all been asked to stay behind for something that Blood wanted them all to do. So now Naruto was sitting with some of those who had remained behind. Beside him was Jinx and Stone, to his other side was Mammoth and Gizmo. While the others were patrolling the rest of the school for the Titans. Thankfully no one is looking for my explosives. The blonde thought to himself, while looking bored out of his mind. He was glad he had a Kage bunch and gather his stuff while he was here. He only had his clothes and the hidden older Red X costume on his person at the moment, the suit hidden under his clothes. What are we waiting for again? The blonde questioned with a dull tone, and Stone slammed his hands together. His form then became covered with stone, making Naruto raise a brow. Well, that doesn't really answer my question. Naruto mutters to himself while the others seem to be getting ready for a fight. Before them is a smirking Brother Blood, making Naruto narrow his eyes, wondering what the psychotic telepath has up his sleeve. Ah, they finally arrived. The man then says, and Naruto looks towards where blood is licking, and sees none other than the Teen Titans he's heard so much about since coming to the Hive. Behind the group was Cyborg, with Beast Boy in front, and to his left with Raven to the far left, Robin to his right and Starfire to his far right. Looking at the group, Naruto listed what he knew of each of them. Starfire was first. She was cute in a little sister kind of way, and looked somewhat like a young version of his mom. She was ferociously loyal to her friends, and those who earned her trust, and deeply despised anyone who harmed or sat in her friends. The girl has light orange skin, with deep emerald green eyes with a light green sclare, long blood red hair, and toned body while being on the tall side. She wore a purple tank top, purple mini skirt, and purple thigh-high boots with a silver metallic sole, a silver metallic belt, collar around her neck, and wrist protectors on her arms. Next was Robin. He was overly serious, had some issues with right and wrong, and was somewhat like Sasuke, only could cut loose and wasn't an arrogant ass. He had spiky black hair, with a black and white domino mask over his eyes. He had average skin, with an athletic build to his own body while being shorter than Naruto. He wore green tights, green gloves, and a green undershirt, with black steel-plated boots, a yellow utility belt, red armored vest over his upper torso with an R over his heart, and a black cape with a yellow interior. Then, Cyborg, from what he had heard, he was smart, fun to be around, had a good sense of humor, and seemed like the muscle of the group. But the Metal Man was also quite able to handle delicate situations, and was one of the pillars that held the Titans together. Cyborg was African American and stood very tall, had a dark gray right eye with a red robotic eye on the left, with blue cybernetic parts on his head and neck, gray parts on his face. His shoulders, forearms, and thighs all had the same blue parts, with his biceps, waist, calves, and upper thighs being pitch black. His upper chest and collar were gray with a square plate on the center of his chest, both the backs of his hands, and his fingers were gray, as well as his feet. Hips, abs, and lower extremities, the rest all being white. Then came Beast Boy. He was a silly goof at first glance, but after paying some attention to him, Naruto noticed that not only was he not an annoying brat, but he in actuality seemed to be almost scarily similar to the blonde ninja. However, he wouldn't get into that as he wouldn't get onto to the others. BB has grass green furry skin, with dark green hair, and jade green eyes. His ears are pointed, with a fang hanging over his lower lip, and a skinny form compared to the other Titans. He wore a black and purple jumpsuit, with a silver belt around his waist, grey gloves with an armored patch at the back of his fist, and a pair of black and purple sneakers with paw prints on the bottoms. Last but certainly not least, Naruto saw the Dark Titan herself, otherwise simply known as Raven. She was a strong girl, not physically, but she was far from helpless. She focused more on spiritual and mental strength, being the wit of the team, and having a massive supply of magical skills to aid her friends. Raven was shorter than Robin, being a couple inches below Naruto's own height, with a curvy body, to make up for it, violet eyes, with gray skin, and violet hair. Though most of this was obscured by the girl's hooded cloak, he had seen her enough on TV to know this. A gold brooch was holding it together, a red ruby in it. She also wore a black leotard, with black gloves on her hands, that had blue cuffs at the wrists and a brooch at the back of each hand, like her cloak had, a belt around her waist made of similar brooches, with 2 tassels hanging down her left leg, and a pair of simple blue boots to cover her feet. Not good. One of them, the green kid says, and Naruto looks to blood. The Teen Titans. So nice to make your acquaintance. I'd introduce you to my students. Blood says while motioning to Naruto and the others. Naruto rolls his eyes however, and then plants his chin into his palm. But I'm fairly certain you've already met most of them. Blood finished with a smirk and Naruto rolled his eyes. However, he was then pulled to his feet by Stone, and glared at the teen with an annoyed frown. Attack pattern alpha. Stone then exclaimed, lunging forward with the troika while Naruto smirked beneath his mask and slipped off to the side. As the Titans and the Hive kids start their little brawl, Naruto walks over to the side to wait for an opening. After all, he couldn't just blow the place to pieces without having a little fun beforehand. He sees his moment when Mammoth and BB come by and Naruto appears between them and grabs BB's arms. Ha, now you're going to. Before the hairy teen can continue his short rant, Naruto uses BB's gorilla arms as leverage, and flips around to plant both his feet into Mammoth's face, sending him flying away. After he is finished with that, Naruto moves his feet to the ground, and tosses BB straight into Robin, knocking the dark-haired teen to the ground. What the hell? Gizmo exclaimed loudly seeing this action, and then dodged Starfire. Whose side are you on? He demanded, and Naruto narrowed his eyes, before throwing a kunai at the Tiny Terror's jetpack. Said Tiny Terror went flying radically as Naruto then jumped up and kicked Starfire in the back, knocking her away, as he then smirked beneath his mask. Mine. He said to the midget simply, then rolled out of the way as Robin lunged at him and swung his staff. Naruto rolled into a crouch and quickly unsheathed his ninjutsu before then lunging at Robin. The two came together with Naruto smirking behind his mask. What the hell, what are you, a thief or a villain? Robin questioned the blonde with a confused tone to his voice, only for Naruto to toss the dark-haired boy away and chuckle lightly to himself while sheathing his sword. Why bother to put labels on everything, kid? I'm just one of a kind. Naruto said simply, then turned to see Jinx rush towards him, and flipped over, and grabbed her around her waist. So, you were planning this from the start, huh? Jinx asked with a scowl, and Naruto frowned under his mask. No, but in my defense, I did say that a ninja would stab you in the back at the first chance. Naruto said to her, then jumped back, when Starfire threw several of her starballs at them. Really now, is that all she can do? Naruto questioned, and Jinx lifted one leg, and kicked him in the shin, making him release the girl. Maybe, but throwing hex bolts isn't all I've got. Jinx shouted and lunged at Naruto with a flying roundhouse kick. Meanwhile, Beast Boy was getting up when he saw this, and then scratched his head with a confused expression. Dude, is it me or is there like a break among their ranks? He questioned, and Raven landed next to him with an annoyed expression. Focus on fighting, and less on that, she said while Cyborg had run off, ramming into Stone, and knocking him through a wall. She then looked for herself and saw the blonde fighting with Jinx. Something about him seemed off, but she decided to worry about that later as she then blocked a blow from Mammoth, then pushed him back with BB as a gorilla. Come on now, Jinx, I really didn't want us to leave on bad terms, but I can't just stay here. Naruto said, then grabbed one of her legs when she tried to kick him. Really now, I'm beginning to think you don't like me much. Naruto then said, and was surprised when Jinx snarled and flipped, kicking him in the side of the face. No, I liked you, but I don't like traitors. She growled, and Naruto blinked, before shrugging his shoulders. That's something we share in common then, but I never wanted to betray your friendship, just blood, don't like him much after all. Naruto said while dodging kicks from the pink-haired girl and finding it ironic he didn't want to hurt her, while he was pretty sure he'd murder Sakura if given the chance. What's with me and pink-haired girls? He then wondered before then flipping back and away from Jinx once more. Really now, listen to me for one damn minute, so I can explain. Naruto shouted while dodging the girl's attacks, only to then be kicked in the chest by the girl. The blonde went rolling backwards into one of the many pillars around the room, and shook his head. Naruto groaned to himself, before looking around and grimaced seeing the titans behind a force field nearby. A lot of help you were. He mutters, then finds the Troika glaring at him. I'm in trouble now, Naruto then said, before looking around and saw Stone throwing Cyborg out of the wall, and into one of the beams in the room. The titans and Troika all turned to watch, save Jinx. She was just glaring at Naruto, before walking over to him, and crossing her arms. You've got 1 minute, she said in a monotone, and Naruto blinked before nodding. Well, you see now, I'm a dishonest person, as are you yourself, he said, and Jinx nodded her head. Hell, that was true. And as a dishonest person you can expect me to do something dishonest, Naruto then said, and Jinx nodded her head to him once more. Honestly, my reasoning for wanting to leave your lovely little academy is quite simple, Naruto then said, and Jinx leaned down to look at him. And that is? She questioned, and Naruto smirked beneath his mask. Well, beyond the fact that I don't like blood trying to control my mind, Naruto questioned, and Jinx looked at the older man's way with a frown. You're not affected either, Naruto then stated with narrowed eyes, and Jinx frowned. In case you've forgotten, I'm bad luck. He gets psychic backlash if he tries too hard. He can only leave little suggestions in my head, as far as I can tell from what Simon said. Jinx then says, and Naruto shrugs before then looking towards Blood then Stone. Said man was punching into Cyborg, only for Naruto to blink, when Stone turned into Cyborg himself. Well, that just figures. I'm not the only traitor in this school after all, Naruto said, and Jinx looked only to blink and gawked towards Cyborg. I knew it. Gizmo then shouts angrily, while Jinx stares at Cyborg. The stinking gak bag is one of them, the tiny terror exclaims loudly, while Blood floats down from his place above the gymnasium floor, and looks towards Naruto first with a frown, before turning over to look at Cyborg. No? He's one of us now, the man states, while holding up some gold and black device Naruto's never seen before. And I'm ready to prove it, Cyborg says while Blood places the device onto his right arm. The metal man's sonic cannon has wires attached to it. As Naruto sees that everyone is distracted, he reaches behind his back and takes out a remote detonator with a smirk. Never show off everything the first try, Blood, he thinks to himself while then slowly getting up, Jinx turning towards him as Cyborg points his cannon at the titans. You said you had one more reason, right? She asked, and Naruto nodded his head. What? She questioned of the blonde, who looked towards the pleading titans, then Jinx, and chuckled. I'll admit I'm probably a team for this, but I don't do things out of the goodness of my heart. The only reason I came to this school was so I could learn how different this world was from my own. Take what you can, give nothing back and all, Naruto said, and Jinx frowned darkly. However, I have to admit, I did like you, and Gizmo, and Mammoth to an extent of course. At that moment, Cyborg yelled a loud psych, before then turning to fire towards them all. Naruto quickly grabbed Jinx, and rolled away from the blast, while keeping her safe. He then finished what he was saying. And I always did want to get out of here with a bang. With that he held up the detonator, and pushed down on the button, massive explosions rocking the skull as it then began to collapse around them. Naruto then quickly tossed Jinx over to Mammoth and stood up. And anyways, it would have been fun to play the villain a little longer to hang out with you guys, but I'm just a thief, and I stole what I wanted already. The blonde ninja said, then backed away from the Hive members slowly. He then turned and began running up the side of the wall as Blood and the rest of the Hive vanished, the Titans escaping with Raven's powers. The blonde halfway up the side of the wall then smirked, and moved his flak jacket zipper down before pulling up his red shirt slightly, to show the black X suit beneath with its grey belt around his waist. Pressing a button on the belt, Naruto shimmered before then appearing in an alley somewhere, and had to duck as a massive explosion sounded behind him, and sent rubble flying everywhere. Next time, less explosives. He muttered under his breath while pushing his shirt back down, and then walking over to a homeless man lying on the street. Naruto looked at the person before rolling his eyes and kicked the man, and watched as he poofed out of existence to reveal a duffel bag. Picking it up, Naruto looked inside to find all his stuff, including some money he had managed to hoard for the past few months. Also was his new X-suit, a picture of him with the trucker and some of their friends, and last was the sacred scroll. Nodding to himself, Naruto then turned and started to walk away from the now collapsing Hive Academy, and couldn't help but chuckle lightly to himself. He then turned around, and put away his armor and sword into the duffel bag, making sure that he wouldn't be recognized as Tempest without noticing his hair. Pulling down his mask, Naruto then walked out of the alley and down the street, whistling to himself as he did and blended into the rest of the crowd. Let's see, what can I do now? Naruto wondered to himself, while walking through the crowd of people. Then he had a thought, since he had both the new and old X suits, why not use the old one, to bug that Robin kid? Grinning, Naruto then thought back and remembered Gizmo saying that a warehouse for Lexscript downtown had a scanner, to find that Tsunathium should. Smirking, the blonde began to make a quite amusing plan in his head, to mess with the Titans just a little. Elsewhere. It's been nearly a year now, why are we still waiting to go look for that damn dope? A familiar voice demands, while slamming his fists into a table, and a tired-sounding man answers him. Because Sasuke, we don't know anything about this world. If it wasn't for Ino's Shintention no Jutsu, we wouldn't even be able to speak their language. We need money, a place to stay, and a plausible reason to these people, if we want to find and bring in Naruto. Kakashi said as he sat at a table wearing civilian clothing and an eye patch. He was currently rubbing his face, while also wondering what god or goddess he pissed off to have to deal with Sasuke for a whole year. Said boy was also the only one who refused to change from his shinobi clothing due to some stupid pride, and it was starting to annoy Kakashi greatly. Neji sat nearby, also wearing simple civilian clothing. He, unlike Sasuke, had managed to get a job like Kakashi. Neji worked at the tea shop, which the Titan girl Raven frequented, sometimes accompanied by her Tamaranian friend Starfire. Kakashi, he worked at a bookstore in town which Raven also visited, which allowed both to listen in on her incas. They saw a blonde that fell under Naruto's description. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata were at high school at the moment, preferring to gather info from the younger generation, and learned quite a bit actually. 1. There was a group called the Hive, which took in superpowered evil teens, so it was possible Naruto went to this place. 2. There were numerous people in town with blonde hair of all shades, so asking for a blonde wouldn't be helpful anymore. And 3. Ninja were practically non-existent in this world. We have money and a place to stay, Kakashi. Why are we looking for Naruto now? Sasuke demanded angrily, wishing he could find the dope and teach him a lesson for bringing him to this backwater excuse for a world. Because if we were to search for Naruto-san, not only would it attract unwanted attention to ourselves, but there is no guarantee that we could find him anyways. Neji said calmly, making Sasuke snarl in his direction. We are fortunate to have not been killed by the portal that brought us here. Uchiha do not test fate again. Neji said flatly, and Sasuke stormed off, leaving Neji and Kakashi alone. My god, he's even more unbearable than before, Kakashi said with a groan, and Neji nodded his head to the man. It seems he did not take the truth very well, Neji said, and Kakashi raised a brow towards the Hyuga. During his fight with Naruto-san, not only did he lose, but he learned that Naruto-san had been holding back for many years, so he would not arm him. I believe he sees this as mocking him, or making a fool out of him, and is becoming more and more hostile as a result. Neji explained calmly and flatly, as though not surprised, and Kakashi grimaced to himself. If Naruto was holding back, if he can beat the shit out of me, Neji, and Sasuke back to back without tiring, he could have been Hokage for sure. The silver-haired man thought to himself before then pulling out one of the books he had bought from work and giggled perversely. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.